everybody. So I'd like to make a few videos concerning those authors, like for example Forster or Kipling, who talked specifically about India. And in order to understand their works, it is very, very important to understand, to study the relationship between Britain and India as far as politics were concerned, as far as economics were concerned, as far as culture was concerned. So first of all, we have to remember that India was called the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. British Empire during the Victorian age, the Victorian era, obviously. The British Empire was so wide that it was said that the sun never set on it, on the empire, because it was so wide that it was all over the globe, all over the earth, and so there was always the sun shining, okay, at any time of the day and the night as well. Okay, so it was very, very, very large and very, very, very wide all over the world, but India was the jewel in the crown. It played a very important role, first of all because of trade, okay, trade of raw material especially. They had a great value. So, for example, we're talking about spices, we're talking about textiles, silk, for example, rubber, jams, and so on and so on. But India also had a very strategic position, okay, for trading, okay, and also for politics. And so it had also this important values, this very important role. Now, England at the time had quite arrogant attitude towards colonies, because they were sure that their role, their mission should be of taking civilization, okay, in the countries they colonized. And so they wanted to impose their own society, their own social pattern. We know, and we have seen that in my videos about the Victorian era and the Victorian compromise, the moral code was very, very strict at the time. There was a social pattern that was very, very, very strict in this patriarchal society in which the middle class had the most important role. Now, they really wanted to impose their own social pattern, their own lifestyle, and their own system. So obviously it also created many contrasts, but let's start from the very, very beginning. So first of all, England first settled in India, obviously, through the so-called, the name was East India Company. The East India Company was a London trading company, basically, that was founded in the 17th century. And it had the complete monopoly of trade, obviously, in that area. So I'm talking about India, but I'm also talking about Pakistan and Bangladesh. The very important element is that this company had also legislative and executive powers on their so-called servants. Then, obviously, during the 19th century, there was a great mutiny among Indian troops, and that was especially in 1857. And the following year, in 1958, the control, basically, of the country, of the colony, passed to the British Crown. And India was so governed by a viceroy that was appointed by Queen Victoria. And in 1876, Queen Victoria was declared Empress of India. At that point, India was organized according to the British political, economic, and educational system too. It was also considered a possible outlet for military careers, for example. Although Indian people were supposed to be treated as equals, unfortunately that never happened. It didn't happen, and there was no integration. In fact, it is said that there was a nation inside the nation, a great clash, between British and Indian people, and no way to bridge that gap. Even in the upper classes, where Indian people were supposed to contribute to government or anyway ruling the country, anyway they were treated as inferiors. For this reason, it is quite obvious that a nationalist movement developed, and so the Indian National Congress met for the first time in Bombay in 1855. Basically, the majority of people belonging to the Congress belonged to Hindu or Muslim religion. The other religions, also Christian religions, were just a minority. Now, they all had the same aim, and that was independence for India. But there was a contrast inside concerning the way they should achieve that final aim, so using or not using violence. Then during the 20th century, during especially the First World War, the nationalist movement stopped for a while, and India and also the Congress, they supported Britain. In fact, they hoped that they could gain some more independence or some more privileges after showing their loyalty during the war. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. Quite on the contrary, in 1919, so after the First World War, the so-called Government of India Act stated that the effective powers passed completely to England. So an anti-British boycotting began in this period, and it was embodied then by the very charismatic, well-known and very, very famous figure of Gandhi. So basically he supported and he organized this civil disobedience, especially in the 20s. And obviously it is very famous today, very inspirational today as well, because it was obtained, was gained without using violence. So that was absolutely effective. In fact, in 1935, the new Government of India Act accorded federation, and finally in 1947, this is a very important year, very important date for India, 1947, the country became finally independent. So independence for India was finally achieved. Now, it is important to understand this development and all these aspects as far as politics were concerned, because many authors, and especially some authors, like for example Forster, they actually talked about that in their work. So it is impossible to understand the real meaning of their work, like Passage to India, if you don't understand what actually happened there, what the feeling was at the time, and what the relationship between British people and Indian people was. So I'd like to go into details and to analyze Forster's work, Passage to India, in my next video. I hope it will be interesting for you.